Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Led Zeppelin discussion that we're doing here on Discord. Today we have, not including me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 boys here to talk about Led Zeppelin, or maybe not. We In the voice chat, we have Twig,
Hey,
we have Gran.
Hey, yo, what's up?
We
Shout out Grand Place on YouTube.
There you go. We have maybe Pisces, we have Ralph,
Dzień dobry. Hello.
we have Shiftless,
Hola.
we have Boss.
That's me.
That's you. And I think that's it. So we're just gonna start right on in. We're gonna try to keep this one shorter than we did the last ones. We've done 2 discussions before. We did Bowie. We did 12 Bowie albums. That took us 2 hours. And then we did 6 Morrissey albums. I think it was 6, and that took us 2 hours as well. So hopefully 6 Led Zeppelin albums, we can actually kind of shorten it a little bit here. But anyway, starting with the first album, Led Zeppelin I, 1969. How many tracks are on this thing? 9 tracks. Yeah, I actually made some notes here. Oh, also, actually, before we should start, I'm going to give my rank the albums and give my top 10 songs. So, my album ranking, I think, I'm not sure. I'm still kind of iffy on this. I'm like 80% sure. I have Untitled, Physical Graffiti, Houses of the Holy, 1, 3, and then 2. Those are my rankings. But the bottom 3 are pretty close to me. And then top 10 songs. I'll also post these in the chat so people can see them. But top 10 songs I have at number 1, Jamaica, of course. Number 2, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. 3, Down by the Seaside. 4, Kashmir. 5, Immigrant Song. 6, The Rain Song. 7, Boogie with Stu. 8, When the Levee Breaks. 9, Dazed and Confused. And 10, In the Light. So there's that. So Led Zeppelin 1. The tracks on here, opener, Good Times, Bad Times. Nothing special, but cool production on the solo. Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, one of my favorites, has great acoustic finger picking, lots of variety in the composition, has a great chorus riff. You Shook Me has a really solid kind of organ, harmonica, blues track with more great solo production as well. Dazed and Confused. Like track 2, it just has this nice variety in the composition, has great production, kind of feels epic, it warrants its length. Your Time Is Gonna Come. Really interesting, almost kind of like psych twinged southern country rock kind of thing. It's a nice reprieve in the middle of the album. Black Mountainside, great dark sounding acoustic finger picked track. Communication Breakdown, this early punk track, but it's not really a genre that you see Led Zeppelin kind of dabble in again. At least not on what I've heard so far. I Can't Quit You, Baby. I don't think it's as great as You Shook Me, but it's still pretty cool. And then How Many More Times, the last track, has a cool riff, and like Dazed and Confused has this kind of cool reverby middle, but it's not really a favorite on the album per se. But I think that, like, listening through this again recently, just kind of skimming through it, it's more solid and cohesive than I remember it being. I think it's a little bit more cohesive than 2, personally. Twig, what do you think about Led Zeppelin 1?
So the first one, like as I said, I have the original record for it, and like the production's really weak on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, my copy may just have some surface noise, but the first side's really good, but then like it just falls off the second for me, and it just bores me a bit. Like I don't know really. It's nothing stands out to me. It's just like an early version of their sound,
Sure.
but they've just improved upon that same formula that they had on here.
Yeah, I agree that I think the first side is better than the second. Do you have a favorite track?
Probably the opener actually.
Interesting choice. Gran, what do you think about Led Zeppelin 1?
I'll be honest, this album and their other 3 self-titles are like the only ones I've heard from them.
Oh, okay.
So personally, this is like one of my second favorites.
Mhm.
And I have to say, like, just as an album, it flows really well. This kind of sound, like you, Alex, is not something I'd expect to enjoy. You know, I don't like my AC/DCs or my Guns N' Roses or Kisses, but I have
Yes.
to say this is very solid. As I said, one of my like around second favorite. My first one has to be Led Zeppelin IV, which is kind of a answer everyone knows.
Right,
But
right. Kind of unavoidable. Do you have a favorite track off of this thing?
that's a good question. There's a lot of really good bangers on this album.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more so than a lot of the other stuff I've heard. Good Time, Bad Time, really good opener. Dazed and Confused, really good closer for side one. And even side two, I wouldn't even say it falls off way too much. I think it stays relatively interesting. I really like Communication Breakdown. How many more times? The second half is really amazing. In general, there's a lot of really cool, raw, explosive performances on this that keep me interested from front to back.
Yeah, it's for a debut, they really kind of brought their A game. And I think that like I said, I think two is a little bit weaker than this one. Maybe part of that is just because this came out the same year, a few months later, so maybe they didn't have as much material ready to go, or they had to kind of rush some things. But yeah, there's maybe only like one or two tracks on here that I might skip if I were to listen to the whole album all the way through. But it does have an interesting variety to it. Ralph, do you have anything? Sorry.
Albums like their debut, Led Zeppelin. It is like one of those albums where the band defined their sound like 100% from the get-go, and they just built it off from there. Like you'd have bands like, from a lack of a better example, like Neutral Milk Hotel, who spent like 70% of their career toying around with like lo-fi rock stuff until they released Airplane Over the Sea.
Exactly, that's right.
So I just find that really fascinating as well. And even like contextually, this hard rock sound, they like really nailed it first go, because you had like you'd have your Creams and Led Zeppelins and the Who's, but they were more like psychedelia adjacent. While these guys, they were everything. They got the power chords, the distorted guitar riffs, the fucking the macho stage performances. Like they were the full package.
Yeah, totally. I feel you. Ralph, did you have anything to say about this one, or are you good?
Well, I'm listening it right now, first time in my life, so I've got nothing interesting to say about it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Shiftless, what do you think about LZ1?
LZ1 kind of holds up in certain regards for me, because like comparing it to like the stuff of Cream, Hendrix, and of that era, like it's roughly coming from the same blues bass artist. But what keeps it really of its own is the fact that I think Page and especially Paul, like they knew, being session musicians, they really knew how to compose a track and really make it grandiose and really big, and they make that part of the hard rock ethos come out the most just from the get-go.
Yeah, 100%.
And they really just cement their statements. And like there's a lot of interesting like ways these songs go. Like Dazed and Confused has so many different sort of, if not just tempo changes, just like going like very abrupt and just stopping to just abrasive. So
yeah,
I respected a lot of it, and just the production. Though I think the first two albums are just a little bit too wearing their. Yeah, I guess I dropped in a.
Yeah, we just didn't hear the last thing that you said.
Oh, like I think their later albums, like 3 onward, show a lot of originality.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, with 3, they started to kind of, I mean, even a little bit on here, they toyed with, a variety of genres, and they would, every album kind of pull some new genres into what songs they were making. But 3 is definitely where you can kind of started to feel, and then especially with 4, they're just kind of pushing the envelope in a lot of different interesting ways. Do you have a favorite track on this album?
Probably Dazed and Confused or Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. Boss, what do you think of this one?
It's pretty good. I think
Led Zeppelin I is a very baseline, obviously, because it's just their first album.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Good Times, Bad Times is an amazing introduction to Led Zeppelin in general.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I've heard that track a ton of times, and I think it's an amazing opener for just a band. But I also think that Led Zeppelin constantly improves album by album, at least in some way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this is still a good album, but I think they would continue to improve up until, well, I think just in general, probably up to like Physical Graffiti, they'd improve, in my opinion at least. But I mean, I like it. There's some, I think this is just my own personal opinion. I think some of the longer tracks, with like maybe one or two exceptions, don't really go anywhere. At least comparative to how their longer tracks would go later on in the career.
Sure.
But I still love. I think Dazed and Confused might be like probably my top 5 or top 10 Led Zeppelin songs. I love that song.
Yeah, that's. I don't think that's a controversial statement, but it's interesting point you made about how some of these longer ones don't necessarily. They're not as adventurous or maybe even like epic as some of the longer ones that they do later.
Yeah.
And actually, just looking through all of the opening tracks on all the Led Zeppelin albums I've heard so far, the opening tracks are usually some of my least favorite, and I don't know why that is. Like, I think that they open the albums well, like you said. Like, this track opened the album pretty well, and like, Whole Lot of Love obviously has a lot of clout behind it. But like as just tracks, for some reason they just don't do much for me, and I don't know. Like,
I can't agree with that, man.
You can't agree with that.
Yeah, fucking Black Dog, Immigration Song, Good Times, Bad Times. Like those are like top tier.
Immigrant Song is the exception. That's the exception, I think. Black Dog,
cool metal riff going on, pretty much.
Black Dog is probably my next favorite opener, because I think it does kind of set the stage well for the rest of the album. But like, I'm not gonna go out and just listen to that one on its own. I don't think. I don't know. I think I'm in the minority on that, and I don't know why that is. But anyway,
understandable.
Yeah,
they're kind of like the radio hits too, I guess.
That's
But they're really well performed radio hits.
That's right. That's right. So that's LZ1, and then a few months later, because this was January, a few months later, October, we get LZ2. Another 9 tracks. Like I said, this one I don't love quite as much as the first one, because I think there's a couple sort of speed bumps in here. So Whole Lot of Love. Again, don't understand the adoration, but it has that kind of cool, weird reverby middle part that they were kind of experimenting with on some of their songs. And I'm eager to hear like what about this track you guys like, because like as soon as I did the reaction, people were like talking about how much they love this track, and it's like one of the last tracks that Jeff Buckley heard before he died, and I'm like, okay. So I'm interested to Whole Lot of Love, I think it was. So I'm interested to hear your guys' take on that one. What is and what should never be. Kind of an underrated favorite for me on the album. It's really restrained, and it has this kind of nice like sultry bass to it. The Lemon Song, LOL. Thank You. Another kind of like nice reprieve. It almost has this like prog rock feel with the organ in there. Heartbreaker, wasn't expecting to love this one as much as I did. It just has a really fantastic riff and a nice solo later on in the track. Living Loving Maid, whatever. Ramble On, cool track. It has a lot of like clashing elements to it that like work better than you feel that they should when they're just on their own. It's like a puzzle that doesn't feel like it should fit quite right, but it's like it still feels like spry and bright, even though it has like some dark edges around it. Moby Dick, it's divisive. I know some people hate it, some people love it. I think it's cool, but it's not something that I'll just like go back to and listen to a lot. And then Bring It On Home, it's not really a favorite for me, but it's cool, and it has a really memorable riff as well. So Twig, what do you think of LZ2?
All right. I don't like this one at all. It's so boring. Honestly. There's around like one track that I listen to on it, and
which is what?
The Lemon song.
Of course.
It's a good song though. It's a good song though.
It is a good song.
The rest of it is just their debut, but just so much more drawn out in a way and just lifeless. Nothing about it stands out. It's just really inconsistent too. I don't like it at all. It's like a 3 for me.
Okay. Gran, what do you think of LZ2?
Well, first of all, I didn't know we were giving scores on these things. If I had to give a score on the first one, I'd say like a 7 out of 10. Like, it's obviously not their greatest, but it's good stuff. This one, I kind of grew up on this album. Well, at least I was familiar with some of these tracks beforehand, which is interesting because this is actually one of my least favorites of their first tour. I do like how their sound is a little bit more mature. Like, it wasn't as loose and raw as it was on their debut, but I kind of like that more. And so what I'm left with is this somewhat, I wouldn't say bland because it is very well performed and very well interesting, production wise, like you said, Alex.
Yeah.
But I don't really connect with the majority of this. The whole thing I hear about this being their heaviest album, I don't hear at all. Like, their first debut, I'd say, is probably their heaviest.
I agree with that. I mean, like the like some of the remasters and deluxe editions for LZ2, like they sound a little crunchier and deeper, but I don't know, there's something about that first album that just seems so like rusty and raw and just like jagged. I mean, maybe it doesn't have like as deep of a bass, I don't think, like a bass frequency, but it just does seem heavier in tone than this one does.
Yeah. And it's both of these albums kind of sound the same too. Like, they have, I wouldn't say they went back a few spots. They didn't go forward sonically. They kind of went backwards. But I don't know, man. There is some songs I really like though. I mean, at least I think I like, because I haven't heard this in quite a while. I remember A Whole Lot of Love being very interesting. That's had to be one of my favorites of the album. Lemon Song was pretty interesting too. Heartbreaker and Ramble On, and maybe even Moby Dick, even though I never listened to that. But otherwise, good. I think it's a good album. I don't remember most of it, and it's a shame because I really liked their debut.
Yeah, it's a really odd thing because like you said, like you look at all these tracks and you're like, these all seem pretty good, but like it just doesn't form into much, and I don't quite know why that is.
I feel like it has to be this blues rock style. I guess just blues in general. I like it when it's so raw, so loose, when it's just completely clean, when it's somewhat more clean sounding than their debut, I'd say.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't like it.
That's fair.
You like it more in like a White Stripe style?
I don't know. I haven't heard White Stripes. I'm sorry, but that's weird because I like Led Zeppelin IV so much. So I'm just like, what is it about this album that doesn't stick with me? Maybe it's just the songwriting, or I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm so used to some of these songs, but then there's Led Zeppelin IV, and every song there is like a fucking chart-topping single, pretty much.
Yeah, Shiftless, what do you think?
It was the first Zeppelin album, so it always has like an important place in my heart because that's when I started getting into a lot of different music. Around like 15. But as I've gotten older, like I still enjoy it, but I can feel it's probably one of the weaker ones for me.
Yeah.
Like it's not as dynamically versed. You can tell it was written on the road. And I feel like, to the dispute of like you guys saying that it's not their heaviest, I think it's their heaviest only on the basis that the riffs are kind of relentless and more monotonic as far as like dynamic range.
Sure.
Like it's more of a heavy metal album in that sense. But besides that, it's not extremely aggressive. Like you'll get more heavier songs off of like 4 or Physical Graffiti, but it's always I always find the album very pleasant to listen to, and it's something that I'll be nostalgic for, but I'll never really be too immersed. Plus, I burned myself out on it like a long time ago.
Do you have a favorite track?
Either Bring It On Home or Ramble On.
Oh, Bring It On Home's an interesting choice.
I don't know. It's something farce about it that I really like, especially with that like very low sounding like blues intro.
Yeah. Is that one of the ones where I might be confusing this with the outro on the next album? Is this the one where he like is singing really weird, or is that the Roy Harper one?
I believe that's Roy Harper.
Yeah. Okay. I'm always like mixing the blues songs together, and I mean it's not even that they're like they sound the same. It's just I cannot keep it all straight in my head. But yeah, Ramble On and Heartbreaker I think are two highlights for me on this thing. What Is and What Should Never Be, I said I also like. Lemon Song is interesting. Thank You is interesting. Really, there's only like, like I said, Whole Lot of Love. I don't dig a whole bunch, but it's fine. Living Loving Maid, no one really cares about that one. Moby Dick, I'll skip that one occasionally. So it's like I enjoy most of this stuff on here. It's just I don't know why I don't like coming back to it all that much. I think, like you said, it just kind of felt quick. It doesn't feel like it makes much of a statement. It just feels like more of the same from one,
It feels like an obligation more than anything.
Yeah, and like maybe a better way to look at it would be as, oh hey, Frostbite's here. Hey man, let me know when you're ready to talk. Since you just got here, I almost kind of see 1 and 2 as like sister albums, or maybe even like a double album. And I think viewing it in that way maybe might help kind of like keep it a little more cohesive, because they were all recorded very close in time, and I would even maybe like shuffle some of these tracks in with some of the Led Zeppelin I tracks, because I feel like some of them would complement each other, but there's certain things on here that I might leave out because they're just not that great. Living Loving Maid.
Paige hates that one.
I know. I think it said on the wiki that was his least favorite, and I'm like, oh, good, I'm not alone. Frostbite, are you ready to?
I know that Fantano loves that song though.
Does he?
Yeah,
of course he does.
In his Led Zeppelin tier list, he mentioned that song, shouted it out.
That's funny. It's really not bad. Like even some of the tracks that like I rag on, they're not terrible. They feel so like just not in the oeuvre of like Led Zeppelin at all, and so it's just like really easy to make fun of it. Yeah, so I guess we'll move on to Led Zeppelin III. Trace. Sorry, boss. Sorry, you didn't say.
Yeah. And I'm especially because I feel like I'm in the minority here. I really love this album. This is like top 3.
Okay.
This is like honestly, at least top 3, top 4.
Honestly, props for you, because liking anything is what I'd rather prefer.
Right, exactly.
Than just hating.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's similar in quality to 1, but also I feel like there's huge steps of just improvement. I like it. I don't know. It's hard for me to even put to words why I like it, but I just I don't know. I like 1 and 2. I just really like this album, and it's hard to. I think I just like how it's a bit heavier, and there's not a ton of really long songs on it like 1.
There's kind of a blunt charm to this album.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite tracks?
I really like Moby Dick as well. I don't think that's my favorite track. That might be too controversial. But I don't know. It'd probably be like the Lemon Song. We need more songs about lemons.
That's
citrus
true.
fruit.
You're exactly right.
Gotta cure the scurvy.
Yeah,
Moby Dick is good.
Moby Dick is good.
Oh.
It's just
Once
like
you've heard you can go first. Sorry.
It's so gimmicky that you're like you feel kind of guilty liking it too much, because it's just like you don't really get anything much like this going forward. It's just kind of this one-off, like it's just drums, but it's good just drums.
I mean, when you have a really good drummer, that makes it. When you have a drummer like Bonham, he's just amazing. Probably one of the best.
What were you going to say, Grant?
Could be good. Rock drum solos could be good.
Yeah,
but honestly, the way to go is jazz drum solos. Like, come on, man.
Oh, Gene Cooper, yeah.
You listen to Love Supreme? fucking amazing drum solo in one of those songs.
Part 3, right?
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Do what?
Ooh, jazz reaction.
Please.
At some point, I promise.
Bro.
The stars have not aligned yet. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you're ready, Frostbite, if you want to talk about LZ2 at all, or if you want me to just keep going forward.
No, I'll jump in just real quick.
Okay.
And just, I guess just regarding our Zeppelin. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in a little bit throughout this discussion, but maybe not as much as I have in the past ones, which might seem weird because I'm known as the rock and roll guy.
Yeah.
But it's weird because I probably respect Led Zeppelin a lot more than I necessarily like them. You know, I like a lot of their music that I've heard, but they're not one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But jumping in on Led Zeppelin II here, the Lemon song is one of my favorite songs by them, and I love the. I love bands that put out, you know, kind of like comical songs like that. I really enjoy things like that when bands release those. You know, like AC/DC, I had a song called Big Balls, and so I love when bands that are known.
Classic meme.
Yeah, when bands that are known to put out, you know, serious music, but then they have like the one song that just stands out, and you're like, what is this song?
Big Ball is classic. Fucking old school YouTube right there.
All right, well, I guess we'll move on to Led Zeppelin Trace now, for real. Sorry, boss, that I forgot about you.
No worries.
So now we have like a year-long gap because we had October 69, now we have October 1970. And kind of like we mentioned previously, this is where we start to see some pretty different stuff happening. This is much less of a hard rock album, and it's pulling a lot of different things like folk. It's just a bigger mixture of tones going on here. Sponge says this album art is terrible. It is pretty, I mean, I don't know. It's a mess. It is a big mess. I'll say that much.
It's okay.
It's okay.
I just recently noticed the teeth in like the center of the cover. There's just teeth in the center of.
Yes, I noticed that.
I just noticed that, and now I can never unnotice it. I always just notice like their faces, and that's it. But now I notice the teeth.
Revolver light.
It reminds me of more Monty Python type of artwork.
Oh, that's a good comparison, actually.
It looks like an I Spy cover.
I like the one that's the colored white more, to be honest. It's a weird negative scaled one. It's weird.
Yeah. And I've actually noticed that because the website I use to get like album covers for when I make my videos, there's throughout the different releases of this album, you know, like CD, vinyl, digital, the portraits of the band members like shuffle around. They're in different places for different releases. And I don't know why that is. It's kind of weird, but I did.
Maybe they're just moving on their own.
Oh yeah. Oh man. If you look away, then they'll shift around. So anyway, we got 10 tracks on this one. Where did I put this one on my list? This is second worst to me. Well, worst, you know, second least favorite. Although I do like a lot of the stuff on here. It's just as an album, I don't think it holds together as well as some others. Immigrant Song, obviously great opener, although it's not really like the rest of the album. Friends, really cool kind of dark alt tuning track. And it kind of looks forward to something like Kashmir. Listening to it again recently, it reminded me of Kashmir a little bit. Celebration Day, really interesting riff and kind of playing in production from Page. It's kind of wobbly sounding. That's a fun one. Since I've Been Loving You, that's one of my favorite blues tracks from them. It's just slow and chill and has great melodies and guitar riffs. Out on the Tiles, it's an odd track. It's like has a really wonky riff, but it's kind of fun. Gallows Pole, it's an upbeat folky track. It's not really one of my favorite of their folk tracks though. Tangerine, another kind of nice reprieve. Bright, bittersweet. It's one of my favorites on the album. That's the Way. It's kind of, it sounds nice, but it's like too open and I can't really detect like the rhythm or like the meter. And it's just, there's a few I think Battle of Evermore is also kind of like that, where it's just like too unrestrained in the playing. It just sounds too open, and I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way for some reason. And then Brawny War Stomp, nice fun skiffle kind of track. And then hats off to Roy Harper. It's more of that wild blues stuff. It's not really a fave either. So, I mean, I love Immigrant Song. Friends and Celebration Day are solid. Since I've Been Loving You is fun. I like Tangerine, but that's like about where a lot of my enjoyment on this album ends. It's just too hit and miss for me. So Twig, what do you think of LZ3?
All right, so I really like this one. The more folky tracks, like that's probably my favorite type of songs that are on the first four, and this is where like they're first introduced.
Yeah.
My favorite tracks would be like Friends, Out on the Tiles, and Tangerine. Probably Friends is my favorite on it. I don't know. Most people don't even talk about that track, but I really like it.
I know it's
An
underrated.
interesting. I don't know if you knew this, but because I have the vinyl for it, and the cover you can actually spin it around to get like different things and all the different slots, like the circles.
Oh, really?
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's like interactive.
Oh, it's like a little kid's like interactive book you get from the library or something. How adorable!
Just like the Velvet Underground.
Yeah. Frostbite, you have anything to say about 3 at all?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I like the tone of the album. You know, I don't listen to like, you know, a lot of the songs off the album. I mean, I don't listen to a lot of Led Zeppelin, you know, on my own anyways. But you know, just from this album, the only song that I maybe revisit every now and then is probably Immigrant Song.
Sure.
Which seems, I mean, that's obviously like mainstream to say, but I haven't deep dove on Led Zeppelin as much as I should. And, you know, but from this album, I've listened to this album, a lot of the songs a few times, and I just like even without necessarily any songs standing out in my mind, like I like the overall tone of the way it feels overall.
Sure. Yeah, that is an interesting point, how really like the only song that's had staying power from this album is Immigrant Song. Like you ask any like, you know, Led Zeppelin fan or like someone who just knows like Led Zeppelin kind of nominally, and it's like you point out everything on this album, they're like, I know Immigrant Song, and that's it. Everything else is just kind of like whatever. Gran, LZ3.
Good album, a step in the right direction, something closer to Led Zeppelin IV, but it stands on its own as a pretty cool album. I do enjoy the sporadic quality of it, which is something you don't get from the first two.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you said, makes a few tracks hit or miss. I really enjoy the blends of hard rock and blues rock and folk rock. There's even like some country I found, which is kind of strange. You don't get that often from these guys. I'd say it's like a smidge higher than Led Zeppelin II, although overall 2 and 3 are one of my least. I hear them the least compared to 1 and 4. Maybe I'm just a nerd for blues rock or something, but who knows. My favorite songs, Immigrant Song is a top tier track from these guys in general. Like there's like a fucking metal riff and stuff, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
Friends is definitely underrated. Like that's one of the songs that immediately struck out to me as like, oh, this is gonna be a different album.
Yeah.
This is gonna be different, and it's good different. I like Gallows Pole, I like Tangerine, as well as Brawny R Stomp. But that last track is so terrible. I don't know why they decided to put that there. I can't stand it.
Isn't he like singing like through a harmonica or something like that? Or am I mixing that up with another blues track? Because I think in one of the videos,
it is a weird opening.
There was
like, I think it might be where the vocals. Where he's doing something to his vocals.
Someone had commented on one of my videos and was like, because I had commented that his vocals had sounded weird in one of the songs, and they were like, I think he's singing through a harmonica for that one, and I don't remember if it's this one or
if you hear the song on like headphones, especially in like the remasters, it is terrible. Like I don't know what they did to this song, man.
It's not a favorite for me either. Shiftless LZ3, what do you think?
was a step in the right direction because it gave them more of an identity. It was definitely them being earnest, which is for better or for worse, depending on how much you want to view Zeppelin as a serious band.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's my most hit or miss album. Like I appreciate what it's doing, but there's aspects of it where it just feels more like experimentation than full like songs to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like Immigrant Song holds up, but it never really captivated me too much.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite like rock track out of that would be Out on the Tiles, but that's because I think the riff is so weird and non-direct that it's kind of captivating.
That's the one that goes like down every like
Yeah.
20 seconds. Yeah.
That Since I've Been Loving You, it's generic in the aspects of like just how Zeppelin's supposed to do like a long blues song, but I think that's their most mature take on that type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is very like sensual and relaxed and very pretty.
Yeah.
And I think the last favorite track would be That's the Way. Like I just love the loose like ramshackle of it, and it just keeps going and going and kind of becoming its own vibe. And I agree that like Page, he can be a great guitarist and then he could be like purposely messy.
Yeah.
And I think he always wants to do that just for the sake of like capturing more of an atmosphere than anything of like being a perfectionist.
Yeah, and that definitely comes through on some of those live performances I've seen where it's just like there will be times where he's very precise and he's just like nailing it and I'm like, wow. And then other times where it's just like kind of messy and sloppy and it's like you kind of start to wonder like, why
Sorry, I got to call real fast.
It's all good. You start to wonder like, why is this the case? Why are you changing it up? But like the longer you listen to them, the more all of that kind of makes sense.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
I was also going to say, add that I'm of the mindset that technically good doesn't always mean better.
Right.
Ingve Malmsteen.
So so I mean, like some of the stuff that I like is it doesn't necessarily have to be the most technically proficient. It's more about the sonic experience, how it's the experience sonically. So,
and I mean, I'm sure we all have plenty of songs where like there's a mistake in it, whether it's like playing an instrument or even like a voice crack or something, where it just like it adds texture to the track.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we all have favorite songs like that. The Unforgettable Boss. What do you think?
It's a mixed bag in my opinion.
Yeah, totally.
Because they're experimenting a lot, which of course, at some point, I think a lot of musicians have like, I'd say this sticks out like a sore thumb because of the experimentation.
Uh-huh.
Like it's not terrible. It's not bad. It definitely isn't bad. It's just like I can only even like what you were saying earlier with people only really remembering Immigrant Song. It's because there's not a ton of like singles off this album. It's definitely not something where it's like, oh yes, I know a lot of these tracks.
Yeah, it looks like Immigrant Song was the only single as well. Just looking on the Wikipedia.
Like Immigrant Song, I like Since I've Been Loving You, and I like Tangerine, but that's what the album feels like. It feels like those three songs. I couldn't tell you really any of the other ones off the top of my head. And I listened to this like a few days ago.
It's not a wildly experimental album, but it does kind of stray away from that formula you get with those first two albums, which I do find a little bit interesting, in my opinion.
Well, it's like,
and
sorry to interrupt, but like this is
no worries.
Like we've kind of talked about before. This was them kind of stepping forward into some of their future stuff, but like it does feel like a first step. It feels kind of, I wouldn't say weak, but just like inexperienced, maybe. Yeah. It like a lot of the things they're doing on here, they do better later, is the thing. So sorry, boss.
And for me, having this in between 2 and 4, which are really good albums, it just kind of it gets lost in the shuffle, a little bit forgotten.
Yeah, I think that is also
the sauce once again.
part of its problem too. Did you say your favorite tracks? I don't remember. Tangerine and Since I've Been Loving You?
Yeah,
Or
probably Since I've Been Loving You or Tangerine. Probably Since I've Been Loving You, because that's a way better version of a longer track than what they were doing on like 1.